So, the theme of loyalty and allegiance and its centrality to the plot, and I hope this is going to be one of the things that will help you to write a decent term paper for me. You don't, obviously, you choose whatever theme or topic you like. There is actually going to be a model paper which I will put up fairly soon on this topic. Okay, so that will also give you perhaps a few more ideas. So, that is the only effect in this presentation, so make the most of it. The rest of it is going to be pretty straightforward, sort of text and description and explanation. But that is, a really important moment, because from the time that happens, from the moment that Horatio is told to swear, he and the guards that are there are told by the ghost to swear to keep silent about what they've seen. From that moment, the play kind of divides itself ideologically into those people who show loyalty and allegiance, and that's a sign of goodness, and those people who don't show loyalty and who betray, and that's a sign of evil. And the whole play seems to fit into this kind of moral schema. Horatio himself remains loyal to Hamlet all the way through. He, at the very end, offers to drink the wine, knowing that Hamlet is going to die from the poison. He takes the cup and says, here's yet some liquor left, shall I drink too and join you? And Hamlet says, no, you don't have to do that. But even up to the point of dying along with Hamlet, Horatio is loyal to him. And he's somebody that, well, Hamlet completely trusts him. Even when he's going to, change that letter and make Rosencrantz and Guildenstern be the people who are going to get killed in England, he tells Horatio. And Horatio is pretty shocked, he thinks, God, they used to be your friends, wow, whoa, that's pretty weird. But he doesn't betray him. Okay, this is what Hamlet's doing, okay. And Hamlet trusts him right through to the end. And at that point, when he says, shall I kill myself? He says, no, it's okay. You don't have to kill yourself. I would prefer you to stay alive so that you can tell other people what's been happening here. So he's one of the few people at the end of the story who doesn't actually die. And that can be seen as a sort of reward for his loyalty. All right? As I say, there's a morality going on in this play. Shakespeare shows people being rewarded for their loyalty or punished for their lack of it. The other thing about Horatio is that he is a very, very simple person in a way. I mean, he doesn't have all these philosophical complications that Hamlet has. I mean, who would want those? I mean, he can hardly do anything because he's always wondering about the philosophical implications of it all. Horatio is a very straightforward sort of person. He doesn't at first believe in ghosts, but as soon as he's seen one, that's it. Okay, fine, I've seen one. All right, now I believe. Right? He's not a complicated person. And if it had been him, if it had been his father who'd been killed, if it had been him who, had a ghost telling him to take revenge, he would have just done it. I'm pretty sure. Somebody like Horatio, he's a loyal person who would just simply do that's my duty. That's what I'll do. He wouldn't think about it. He wouldn't consider all the implications and the philosophy and the different possibilities. He'd just go straight off and do it. Okay. So in that sense, he makes a very clear kind of contrast with Hamlet himself. So let's take a look now at Hamlet and his idea of loyalty and the way that he shows his loyalty. Again, I'm going to start with the ghost and the conversation that goes on between Hamlet and the ghost, where the ghost says, if thou didst ever thy dear father love, to which Hamlet replies, oh God, meaning, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, I really did love my father. How can anybody say if? Of course I loved him. Oh God, yes. If ever thou didst thy father love, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder. Murder? Murder most foul. As in the best it is. Even in good cases, murder is a terrible thing. But this one is most foul, strange and unnatural. Unnatural because it goes against nature to kill a brother. And then Hamlet says these interesting words because he doesn't do it. He says, haste me to know it, that I with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge. Well, that's a joke, isn't it, really? He doesn't sweep to his revenge with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love. He spends the next... I mean, do you realise how long this play takes to act on the stage in its fullness? It takes, depending on how it's done, it could take over 4 hours and sometimes nearly 5 hours to do the complete play. So for the next 3.5 hours, he's just going to be basically hanging around. Okay? He's not doing what he's promising here. So in a sense, Hamlet is not really loyal to his father's wishes. Not in the way that Horatio would have been. Okay? So let's take a look a little bit more in detail at what's bothering Hamlet here. He wants to follow the ancient code of loyalty, but he's torn apart with doubts. And as I say, this is a sort of reflection of the age. This is an age when people are torn apart with doubts. That's what this whole period is about. Perhaps it's what makes it so interesting and such a fantastic time for literature. Because it's not just, we particularly study Shakespeare at university and stuff, but it's only because the language is so a little bit difficult for us, and the way of thinking is a little bit difficult, but there were so many great writers from this time. And part of that, I think, is because of the crisis that the society was facing. So, all right, he's worried about, as we know, he's worried, has the ghost been sent from hell? And he's not really telling him, the right path for the right thing he should do, but actually tempting him into doing evil. And this is a sort of epitome or a summing up of the conflicting Catholic and Protestant values, the moral values of the religion, and also the question of passion versus morality. And, should he put his family first, his blood? Or should he look at the state? He's a prince. After all, he is responsible for the welfare of the entire country. Isn't it better just to sort of keep things peaceful and smooth things over? If he goes and kills the king now, there could be a revolution. All right, it could be the wrong thing to do from the point of view of his responsibilities as a leader of the country. So he's got all kinds of things that he has to bear in mind, or that he feels he needs to bear in mind. As I say, if he were a Horatio, he wouldn't bother about all those things, he'd just get on and do the job. So it's not just a question of being loyal, it's a question of be loyal to who? Or to what? Where do Hamlet's loyalties lie? And he's trying to work this out himself. He wants to do the right thing. He desperately wants to do the right thing. He wants to be a good guy. All right? He's not out to be a villain. He's terribly, terribly hurt and upset by his father's death, and he wants to do what's right. But the question is, what is right? And that's what he's trying to work out. And in the end, he makes a bloody awful mess of it anyway. But it's the working out, trying to find the right way, that takes up all those hours in the development of the play. And going back to that famous to be or not to be speech, should he suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and just sort of put up with it all, or should he take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them? So he's conflicted. He doesn't really know what is the right way. And he's promised to the ghost that he's going to sweep to his revenge, but he can't do that because conscience does make cowards of us all. The more he thinks about it, the less he finds himself able to act in a straightforward, direct fashion. And so that's really what the play is about. It's about his doubts about his loyalty, his doubts about his allegiance. That's the kind of main idea, if you like, of Hamlet, seen from a certain point of view. And I would, go along with those people who think about Hamlet and Shakespeare in terms of Catholicism and religion. I would agree that, this really does seem to be connected with the spiritual crisis of the Reformation. All right? Should we follow the old way? Okay, that our forefathers, our parents and grandfathers and great-grandfathers have followed for centuries? Should we follow the old way, or should we adopt the new faith, the faith of the Protestants? It's more than just the faith of the Protestants, but that's a large part of what is changing the morality of society. The whole moral code is changing because of this shift from Catholicism to Protestantism. So I would say, absolutely, I think that is a central theme. Okay? But as you remember from my previous presentation on was Shakespeare a Catholic, I don't think we can draw too many conclusions about which answer Shakespeare would want us to reach. He's exploring the questions, but he's not necessarily giving us any clear answers. So, all right, loyalty to the father. Now that immediately, it's not just like, in this context, it becomes more than just the matter of blood between father and son. Loyalty to the father calls up the whole idea of God the Father. And I think it's a natural thing that we would see Hamlet's loyalty to his father as being a kind of symbol of the Christian's loyalty to God the Father. I don't think that's, some critics might want to play that down, but for me, I'm quite happy to accept that and say, yes, I think that's probably a pretty central theme, and that's what Shakespeare would have had in mind, and that's what his audience would have had in mind, to a large extent. But I wouldn't go as far as agreeing that he's arguing for the Catholic ways. As you know from my previous presentation, I don't think that we can use the plays as evidence that Shakespeare is a secret Catholic. It just doesn't work out. It's not as smooth as that. It's not as simple as that. Yes, the play raises questions about what true loyalty is, and yes, it's about loyalty to God, loyalty to the true faith. That's part of loyalty. But we're getting a lot of mixed messages. We're not getting a straight answer from Shakespeare about what the true faith might be. So I don't think we can draw any clear conclusions about that. On the one hand, we've got the ghost, for example, okay, telling the truth. Now, it's proven that the ghost is telling the truth. You know, the little play within a play shows that the ghost is telling the truth. So what does that mean? It implies that there really is a purgatory. So that would be a Catholic thing, wouldn't it? If there really is a purgatory, because the Protestants didn't believe in purgatory. Remember, the Protestants have heaven and hell. They don't have anywhere else. If you're in heaven, you can't come back to this earth. If you're in hell, you can't come back to this earth. For Protestants, there's no such thing as ghosts. Believing in ghosts is a Catholic thing. Horatio has been converted to a Catholic belief the minute he sees the ghost. Okay? So this would seem to be kind of saying, well, you know, the Catholic idea is true. There is a purgatory. There is the possibility that there could be ghosts. All right? We seem to be seeing a Catholic idea being accepted in the play. But on the other hand, Hamlet tells Horatio, there's a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will. God decides our fate. We can do what we like, but God decides our fate. Hey, that's the Protestant idea of predestination. So we've got one Catholic idea about the ghost and purgatory. Well, we've got a Protestant idea too. The idea that humans don't have free will, but that God has decided their fate. And that there's a divinity that shapes our ends. So we've got a Catholic idea and a Protestant idea. They're both present in the play. They're both being worked through. They're both being accepted and put forward as being true. Okay? You get another example when Hamlet tells Horatio not to kill himself. He says, absent thee from felicity a while. It doesn't just say don't drink the poison and kill yourself. It says absent thee from felicity a while. Don't go into happiness yet. Felicity, happiness. Don't go to heaven yet. Do you see a problem with that? He's telling Horatio, no, don't kill yourself yet. Don't go to heaven yet. But what does Christianity have to say about suicide? It's a sin. And you can't go to heaven. Okay? So this is not just Catholic and Protestant, this is a general Christian thing. All right? Catholics and Protestants both have strong ideas about suicide. That suicide is a form of murder. All right? But particularly for Catholics, because if you die in the middle of your sin, then you will go straight to hell. Particularly for Catholics at that time. All right? So that goes against the Catholic idea. All right, because it's saying, you know, that if you drink the poison and commit suicide, you will go to felicity, you will go to heaven. And Hamlet says, don't do that just yet. So that seems to accept an idea that a person who commits suicide can go to heaven. But that's not what the Catholics would ever have said. And it's even rather difficult for a Protestant to say it. And then what happens when Ophelia, it's not absolutely clear whether she's committed suicide or whether it's been an accident, but as far as the gravediggers are concerned, and as far as the priest who conducts the service is concerned, the priest who conducts the Mass, he also basically takes the view that she's committed suicide. And it's only because she's a high-class lady that she can be buried on church land. The implication there being that if you committed suicide, you can't go to heaven. So you've got two contradictory ideas being put forward in the play. To say that Shakespeare is choosing one side of these is disingenuous. It's not really possible to argue that because they're both there. How can you say that he's choosing one and not the other? All right? Both of those ideas are in there. And why are they both in there? Because Shakespeare wants to tell a good story above everything else. All right? And like most good literature, you don't tell a good story by pushing some kind of doctrinal message. That's not the way that great literature works. I mean, next term I'll be talking about the Bible and I'll be saying the same sorts of things. The Bible does not teach people how to behave. It's one of the big mistakes that people have about the Bible. They think it contains a teaching for behavior. It doesn't. it asks you to think about questions, moral questions. And that's the same thing that Shakespeare is doing here. The play raises questions about what loyalty and allegiance are, both religious loyalty and loyalty in a secular context. That means in a non-religious situation like loyalty to family, loyalty to king, loyalty to things in this world. But like all great literature, it doesn't answer those kinds of questions. The point about literature is that it gets the people who read it or the people who see it, it gets them thinking about it. It's not there to give them answers. It's there to get them thinking about what's the right answer for you? What's your answer? What do you think about this? And of course, in this context, you need to remember that the wisest person in Western civilization was Socrates. And what was the whole point about Socrates? He knew that he didn't know. Okay? So, I think you need to understand Western the certainties. I mean, this is interesting because it's a society a culture that's given us science and certainties in a certain objective kind of way. And yet at the same time, in the middle of all of that, there's look, all I know is that the more I think about it, the less I know. Okay? And that's, the wisest man of all. That's Socrates. And we get that, carrying on, that kind of, it's coming through in Shakespeare, it's coming through in most of our literature. It's a basic aspect of our culture. So, well, let's say a little bit more. Let's just come back to fathers. Fortinbras is another person who has a father who has been killed. And this is pretty complicated sort of pattern that we've got here, because Fortinbras has a father who has been killed, and Fortinbras' father's name is also Fortinbras. Hamlet has a father who's been killed, and Hamlet's father's name is also Hamlet. So there's Shakespeare is clearly making a sort of parallel here. I mean, to make it even stronger, who killed Fortinbras' father? Hamlet's father killed Fortinbras' father. All right, so you've got them very closely kind of linked even before the play has begun. And the other similarity, that Hamlet is a prince just like Fortinbras, and that both of them, in both of their cases, the king of the country is their uncle. So there's a very close parallel between these two, and yet, in many ways, they are complete opposites. Beyond these similarities, they are almost exactly different. Fortinbras is determined to take revenge on Denmark, but his uncle has told him not to, and so he's going to go and attack Poland. And on his return, when he comes back through Denmark, he finds that Claudius, the king, is dead, and that Hamlet is dying, having been poisoned. And he then is named by Hamlet as being the next king of Denmark. So, like Horatio, he's one of the two of them are really the only two important characters that are left standing at the end of the play. And again, you can see a certain morality here, that this is his reward for a kind of loyalty, for the way that he has expressed his loyalty, for choosing to be loyal to the right things. He's a complete opposite, as I say, to Hamlet, because he's a hot-headed person. He doesn't talk much. Hamlet spends most of his time talking. This guy, he's a man of action. He gets out there and does things. He's a bit like Horatio in that sense. He doesn't think about things too much. He gets out there and does them. And he certainly wants revenge. I mean, that's what he went. No, this was his first plan was to attack Denmark. But you see, in his heart, he wants revenge, but his head knows that, wait a minute, my uncle has told me no. And he accepts what his uncle has told him. You may remember we saw that picture of Queen Elizabeth I, in which she had a snake and a jewel. Okay, the symbolism being that the jewel representing her passion, her heart, and the snake representing her intelligence, her head. That her head was in control of her heart. This would be very Elizabethan morality, that the head controls the heart. In Hamlet's case, his heart is taking over, and he's losing his reason, he's losing his head. Okay? Fortinbras has got it right. His heart is all, I wish to revenge my father's death, to avenge my father's death. But his head tells him, I have to do as I have been told by the king of my country. That is my true allegiance, that it goes beyond what my heart tells me to do. And so the result is that he is, along with Horatio, the only other important person who's left standing at the end of the play. While Polonius, Ophelia, Laertes, Claudius, Gertrude, Hamlet, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, they're all dead. One way or another, they've messed it up. They've either not shown allegiance, they've betrayed, or they've shown allegiance to the wrong thing. And their reward is, or their punishment, if you like, is that they are dead at the end of the play. So if the ending is supposed to represent some kind of divine justice, this is God, paying everybody back for their actions, then Fortinbras' survival would seem to be a reward for his sense of allegiance. He was loyal to his father in spirit, and loyal to his uncle in deed. And his uncle, ruled his head and controlled his passion and said, stop, think about this, all right? I know in your heart that's what you want to do and that's very honourable, but I'm asking you for reasons of state not to. So it seems that Fortinbras is being rewarded, and he gets back the kingdom of Denmark. He gets all the lands of Denmark that he lost when his father was killed. So he is rewarded. Everything comes to him at the end of the play. So if there is a moral, then the moral would be, don't take revenge. Okay, I mean, Hamlet does. Where does that get him? Laertes tries to as well. And where does that get him? They end up dead. Okay, so even though the ghost is telling the truth, it would still seem to have been leading Hamlet down the wrong path, leading him into a wicked ending. All right, well, before we go on from loyalty to fathers, before we move on from this topic, I think we need to mention another father, the one that we saw killed in Gertrude's chamber in her room by Hamlet, Polonius, and his children. What about their loyalty to their father? Well, Ophelia, yes, she shows loyalty to her father, and she, in a sense, betrays Hamlet because of the loyalty to her father. Because he tells her, avoid Hamlet's company because, with these princes, you never know what might happen, and I should stay away from him, okay? Even if he protests that he loves you, I think the safe thing is just not to get too close. And then she lets herself be used. They say, go and talk to him and we'll be listening. And she allows that to happen. So she lets herself be used against Hamlet, and in that sense she betrays him. But she's not, according to Elizabethan understanding, according to the morality of the 16th century, She's done nothing wrong. Why not? Well, because it would be a woman's duty to obey whichever man she was subject to. The idea of a free woman who was not subject to any man was pretty, even in the 19th century they were struggling with that idea, okay? Every woman was supposed to be kind of under the responsibility of a man. And in her case, if she'd been married to Hamlet, well, it would be Hamlet, but she's not married to him. Okay? So her duty is to obey her father. So she is doing her duty. She's done her duty, even though that involves a betrayal of Hamlet. And then Laertes. Well, he, like Fortinbras, has no doubts about what he wants to do. He wants to take revenge for the death of his father. And he challenges Hamlet, who of course is the murderer of his father. So this now opens him up to becoming the agent for Claudius to get what he wants. He can engineer Hamlet's death. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were charged with this, but they failed. And instead they ended up dead. Now Laertes can be the tool for Claudius to achieve Hamlet's death. Laertes is, doing nothing wrong in following the moral code that or it's not clear that he's doing anything wrong in following the moral code that seeks revenge for his father. Where he goes wrong is that he accepts Claudius's proposal to poison the tip of his sword before dueling with Hamlet. That's cheating, isn't it? Okay? Putting poison on the tip of your sword, well, that's not fighting fair. And when, in the confusion of the fighting, Hamlet picks up Laertes' sword and stabs him with it, Laertes knows that he's being paid back for his treachery, for his betrayal. And he says so. Okay? I am justly killed with my own treachery. So, again, the morality of a betrayal has to be paid for. And his betrayal, his treachery, is to have secretly put poison on the tip of his sword. And he pays the price by dying by that same sword. So again, we're seeing a pattern here of morality with people being paid back for their loyalty positively and paid back for their disloyalty negatively. The big betrayer in the whole story is Claudius, of course. And all of the other betrayals really stem from his original betrayal. Gertrude places her loyalty, with Claudius. Ophelia follows her father, Polonius. All these betrayals happen because of what Claudius himself has done. He's murdered his brother and seized his crown. Well, Hamlet is debating about, where his allegiance should be. Should he, place his allegiance with his blood ties, with his father, revenge? Should that be his main allegiance? Should he place his allegiance in God and let God see justice done and accept the biblical teaching which says that we should not take revenge? Or should he put it with the state as a prince and do what is right for the country? Where should he put his allegiance? The thing about Claudius is that, he's betrayed all three of those. He's betrayed his blood, he's killed his own brother. All right? He's betrayed his God, he's committed murder. And he's betrayed the state because something is now rotten in the state of Denmark, as is said at the end of Act 1 there. He's destabilized the entire country, just out of selfish ambition, greed, something like that. So he is the big betrayer in the story, and he sets the whole thing, the whole action, moving. Basically, you've got a single act of evil that taints and infects everything else. That it kind of poisons everything else. And you get a lot of literature which does this, which shows how one act of evil will kind of have to work its way through, and sort of it will have repercussions before it disappears. So all of the people who show loyalty to the king, well, they're corrupted because they are giving their allegiance to the wrong person. They are trusting somebody who doesn't deserve it. So it's not entirely their fault. Gertrude, well, she's the most difficult one, because how much does she know of what Claudius has done? But Polonius is only doing what he should do as a good courtier, and he's trying to do his duty to the king. But the thing is that because the king has broken faith, then Polonius's actions are poisoned. So all of those who are loyal to the king are corrupted because they're giving their allegiance to someone who doesn't deserve it. And then finally, Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, and as we were talking about earlier on today, in the first thing he does after killing Polonius is accuse his mother of conspiring in the murder of his father, using those words that it is a bloody deed to kill Polonius, almost as bad, good mother, as kill a king and marry with his brother, basically accusing her. But she's so shocked that he doesn't actually come back and repeat that accusation. She does seem to be called, what are you talking about? Like either she's very good at acting, or she really doesn't know what he means at this stage. Okay? And so he doesn't bring back that topic that she's murdered her husband, her first husband, Hamlet's father. The way he expresses it is just based on what he's sure of. He knows that she really has married her dead husband's brother, and he accuses her of that. And showing her a picture of the two and saying, how could you possibly go from this to this? From a great man like my father to this miserable excuse for a human being. And this hits the spot. Please stop it, your words are hurting me so much, you're striking right into my soul. This is too hard for me to listen to. Please stop. All right? So she does seem to feel the guilt, the terrible guilt of what she's done at this stage. But as I said just now, before we began this presentation, as I was talking about while we're watching the video, she doesn't actually ask him, why are you calling Claudius a murderer? So it's a little bit strange, because that suggests that she did know something, or at least that she suspected something. Okay? So it's not really very clear how much Hamlet's mother knows about the situation, but what is important here in terms of loyalty is that she keeps her promise. Hamlet says, don't tell anybody what we've been talking about here. And she does. She just says, oh, he's mad. She doesn't say, oh, he knows that you killed his father. So, and then, of course, she is the one who gets betrayed by Claudius when she drinks the wine, he could stop her. He could say, "Don't, for God's sake." He does try to stop. He says, "Please don't." She says, "Oh, I will." And he could jump up and say, "No, for God's sake, there's poison in it." All right, he would be giving himself away. But I mean, it's going to be pretty clear in a minute or two when she starts dying anyway. He might as well stop her before she drinks. All right, but he doesn't. He lets her drink. He lets her die. And like all of the others who are not absolutely clear and straight in their allegiance, including Hamlet, she ends up dead. The only two who stay alive are the two who've got it clear what loyalty is and how to be loyal. Horatio and Fortinbras. They're the two who survive. All right? So I would say there is a clear moral message going on there from Shakespeare. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. Okay? God has been watching all of this and he's made his decision. You guys, you got it wrong. You're dead. You two, Horatio and Fortinbras, you got it right. You're still alive. Okay, that would be kind of very sort of simplistic way of putting it, but I think there is that kind of moral judgment at the end of the play there, and it's based on who shows loyalty, who shows allegiance. Okay, so that's about it really. That's all I've got to say on that subject, and so we end another presentation.